Hi guys, I told a bunch of you that I would go ahead and post a little video on the Simionics that I'm setting up. I'm building basically a 172 panel here, 172, 182 panel. It's not done yet, but it's up and running as far as it's flyable. I just don't have the switch panels that I want in there yet. But I can kind of show you the Simionics and some of the stuff I like about it, and it has a few quirks. One of the things about the Simionics is it runs on iPads. Each one of these has an iPad for its screen, and it uses its own processor, and then they connect wirelessly to the computer. And one of the things I found, and it's actually in the instructions, is you need to get them fired up before you start the simulator. And I think the reason is that way they grab the appropriate port, wireless port that they want. If they don't get that port, then they get kind of finicky. So they're set up. If you touch these two buttons, nose up and nose down, that will fire up the iPad in each one. And then we'll let them come up. And the bezels talk to the iPads by Bluetooth. The iPads talk to the computer via Wi-Fi. So it's kind of interesting setup. So here's just the home screen coming up. Okay, and now I'm going to boot up. There's a PFD app, so I'm going to boot the PFD app on this one. And we're going to boot the MFD on this one. And you'll see it says waiting for connection, bezel connected, and then it's going to be PFD and MFD connected. So they're going to talk to each other now, the two, connected to the MFD, connected to the PFD. If you start them this way, they seem to start perfect every time. Okay, so now that we've got both iPads up and running, the G1000 is up and running, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my computer and it'll grab the correct port right off the bat. So we'll go ahead and fire up that computer and give it a sec here to get going. Usually comes up pretty good. So monitor's firing up and we'll get Xplane started. So I'm going to come over here and get Xplane running. And that glare that you're seeing in the camera on the screen, I don't really see that. The camera's picking that up. But anyways, we'll just start a new flight. And I usually, right now, I'm doing a lot of experimentation with the Simionics. I'm going to show you why I chose to go this route instead of Realsimgear. I actually have most of the Realsimgear components right there for another sim that I'm setting up that we'll talk about later. Here, let's go ahead and we'll just put this at okay, SNA, John Wayne, and we'll pick a spot there somewhere down here on the ramp, right there, and confirm, and we'll start that flight. So it's going to load up that software. I'm running Orbix, so it does seem to take a while sometimes to load that Southern California software or the scenery, but it does a nice job. So I'm real happy so far with the Simionics, and as soon as I get this going, I'm going to show you a couple of reasons why I chose to go this route as opposed to the Realsimgear. I'm real happy with the Realsimgear units. I have a 430, 530, 650, 750. There's a specific reason I didn't go with the Realsimgear G1000, and I'll tell you that in a sec. Okay, so we're back now, and the audio should be coming now through. I'm running a Flight Sounds FSX Dual there, so I can use the actual aircraft headset. And that's the thing is, I fly for real, and the goal of the simulator is to train some other pilots to make the transition from round dial aircraft to glass to flying a G1000 type aircraft. And so I was looking for as accurate a representation of a G1000 as we can get. So one thing that the Simionics does not do is it does not throw up a Garmin splash screen when you first initialize it like the other Realsimgear units. If you run them with Reality XP software, they'll do that. They look just like a Garmin. They throw up the Garmin splash screen and do all that. So you don't get that with the Simionics. However, the Simionics, this is running a different G1000 software than what you're seeing up there on the panel. That's the Xplane 11's G1000. This is all Simionics. All of the Simionics, or I'm sorry, all the G1000 rendering here is done within the iPad using the iPad's app. It's just pulling information from the simulator to the apps. So that does a couple things. One, the app is different than the Xplane 11 G1000, and I would say it has more resolution. And when I say that, I don't mean screen resolution. I mean that it goes deeper into the functions of the G1000 if you're going to get seriously into those functions. The other thing that it does is all of this up here has to be rendered by my computer for when you put the G1000 up there, and that hammers the screen rate, the screen refresh rate, or frames per second. And actually we should put that up here. So let me get up here to view, I think it is. Let's see. I'll have to find that to put it back up. I forget where the heck that is. Might be on, yeah, here we go. So let's put the frame rate. We'll show, there we go, done. And so right now, if you look at that, that's running about 40 frames per second right now. And that's with the G1000 being rendered, and that's only one screen. So let's go ahead and fire it up the rest. This is a temporary setup here that I have right here just to allow me to get everything set up. So now the G1000 and both sides has come alive. The MFD and the PFD has gone out of revisionary mode, and the engine gauges have jumped across. And yeah, it's showing about 40 frames per second is what it's rendering at right now. Now, if I take that out and just look ahead, even in just this still, it picked up it's like 43, 44, but that'll be quite a bit more. There's a bigger jump once we're airborne. So I'm going to go back to where I can show you this. If there's a lot of scenery going on, it can make the difference between 55 to 60 frames per second, and down in the 30s. It's a huge difference if the computer does not have to render the G1000 setup. So that's one of the things I really like about it. Another is, like I said, the resolution. Now, when I say resolution, I don't mean screen resolution, and I'll show you this. If I use my mouse and I take the G1000 and let's go to the map page. Let's see here, nav, and let's go map, and we'll put the topo on. And unfortunately, that's not a great topo screen, but are we in the same place there? Let's see. KSNA, yeah, and here, where are we looking at here? Let's see if we can zoom this out and get the same kind of representation going. Zoom out would be here. Let's zoom in. Don't want that. Sorry. Okay, so there you can see the resolution to the topo. And when you look at the same resolution on the Simionics, it's much more pixelated right here. And I believe that my understanding is that's because of the difference in the amount of memory that an iPad has to allocate to those graphics versus the full-on computer can render it up there in a much higher resolution. So in that respect, you lose a little bit, and you mainly only notice that in like the topo map screens or the radar screen, something like that, where it's looking at a map and it's digitally representing either terrain or radar echoes or something like that. You'll see it's a little more pixelated. To me, that's not a big deal. Let me get rid of this because that's just in the way. Here's what's a big deal is on the G1000, if you look up here in the Xplane G1000, it says nav pages. Well, in reality, the G1000 never says nav pages there. There are chapters and pages here, and so this is the nav chapter actually, and it only shows one page there. And the little knob should change between the pages. The big knob changes between the chapters. So if I go here and I tell it I want to change chapters, let's see if I can get it to do it. And for some reason I can't even get it to do it. Let's see. Well, let's take this for example, the flight plan page. So in the flight plan page, right here, it's showing 2 pages in there. And the little knob should change pages, right? And if I go to a different page, which today doesn't even seem like it wants to do. Why is it doing that to me here? There we go. I had a cursor on. So in the nav pages, it's showing 1 page, or nav chapter, 1 page available. In the waypoint page, it's showing all of, I believe, 1 page. Yes. Or was that 2 pages? Let's see. Nope, just 1 page there. So you only have 1 page in the waypoint pages. If you go to the nearest, you have 4 pages in there. So you have a page for nearest airports. You have a page for nearest intersections. A page for, man, that glare is right there. Sorry about that. Page for the nearest NDB. And page for nearest VOR. So you have 4 pages there. And then if I go to another chapter here or another chapter, that's it. That's what we have available. In reality, this is how a real G1000 pretty much works. Is when I bring this up to the chapters, you can see I have a chapter, and it'll time out if I don't keep turning the knob every couple seconds. Map, waypoint, auxiliary, flight plan, checklist, and nearest. In the map pages alone, I have, in the map chapter, I have 5 pages. Navigation, traffic, storm scope, weather data link, and terrain proximity. It's all red right now because that has to do with how high you are above the terrain, and I'm sitting on the ground, so everything's red. I can zoom it back out here some, but everything's going to stay red. So that's just in the map. In the waypoint pages, you've got airport information, intersection information. Make sure I'm still aiming here. You have NDB, VORs, and user waypoints. To me, that's a big thing, and I'll tell you why in a minute. If we go to the auxiliary pages, there are none of these on the Xplane. These are the pages that allow you to adjust and do functions within the GPS and change the way it represents information. So there's a trip planning page, a utility page with timers. There's a GPS status page where you can check the status of the GPSs. There's 2 GPSs working. There's the system setup. This is an important page. You can change what fields are being displayed. Again, for me, this is a big deal, and I'll explain why later. And XM information, which I don't use for anything, but in the real airplane, you can have XM set up for both music and satellite and weather information. And then the system status, it tells you the status. None of those pages are represented in the Xplane 11 G1000. Okay. Then we go to flight plan. There are just 2 pages in the flight plan. So there's the active flight plan and stored flight plan pages. Then we go to checklists. All of the checklists in the aircraft, or for this particular aircraft, are in here. So there's emergency procedures. There's that come up first, and then you can also do normal procedures. You can just scroll down normal, before takeoff, and route landing. You know, if you want to do your normal, or say your before takeoff, you just hit enter. Then you scroll down, and you can just start banging through them as you check everything off. Again, that's true to the regular aircraft. In a real G1000, it's not represented in the Xplane G1000. And then the nearest page. So here, the nearest page, it will give you nearest airports, nearest intersections, nearest NDBs, nearest VORs, whoops, I jumped one, nearest user waypoints, the nearest frequencies, which is interesting. Say you're not really sure what center frequency to hit center on and what's, you know, for the area you're in. You can actually pull it up right here. And nearest airspace. So all of that stuff, that's when I say the resolution is much better on the Simionics G1000 than it is on the Xplane G1000. It just does not go in depth to the level that the Simionics does. Your engine pages are there. You can go to the system page. You can do lean and lean assist, just like you can in the real aircraft. I mean, all of these functions work. Now, some of them work in the Xplane, but not all of them. So far, I've delved into this pretty far, and I'm pretty happy. There's a couple of glitches that I have found that are just slightly different, and it's once you're really delving into the depths of like flying an IFR flight plan and setting up VNAV profiles or something like that. There's a couple small glitches that it has, and another thing that I really like about this unit is you can email the fellow that designed this. His name is Chen Li. I email him directly and he responds, and sometimes I've thought there was a glitch and it turns out it was something I was doing wrong, and he enlightened me, which was awesome. And by the same token, I found a glitch or two, and he's totally willing to say, hey, yeah, you know what, that's something that needs to be addressed in the next update. So I like that. So the only other thing I'm going to show you here, I'm going to get it flying. There was somebody asking questions about synthetic vision and what is synthetic vision and what does it have. So the real Garmin's, the later versions have synthetic vision in them. The G1000 and Xplane does not. So let me get it flying here. I'll be right back and I'll show you what the synthetic vision is all about. Okay, so let me see if I'm good enough to actually keep it airborne without crashing it, without using the autopilot, and at the same time explain the synthetic vision, and I don't know if I'm good enough for this. So the synthetic vision, let me turn it off here. Okay, so I'm going to show you the standard. This is the standard G1000, and so your horizon is just represented brown above, blue above and brown below. And that works for your horizon. So as I'm banking and pitching, you know, that's giving me the representation of the horizon and what it's doing. What the synthetic vision does, and I'm at John Wayne Airport, so right now I'm facing west. This is in the Southern California area, and I'm right at the coast. So the ocean is out there, so it's completely flat out there anyway. So I'm going to turn around and face back towards the east here, towards the mountains, and you can see the G1000 doing its thing. Let me throttle back here a little bit, and please, I'm not trying to fly accurately, I'm just trying to demonstrate this thing. So if you're seeing me do stuff that you're like, oh, you'd never do that, you're right. I'm just doing just kind of playing around here to show you what's going on with this. So let me get her trimmed up a little bit here, and there's the airport right there that I came out of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to line up and fly down the runway, but I'm going to turn synthetic vision on. So I go to PFD and then synthetic vision, I turn it on, and synthetic terrain. And what's going to happen is all of a sudden now you see the terrain and the mountains. You see the mountains out here, hopefully with the contrast you can see them, and you can actually see the terrain up there ahead of me, and it will color the terrain. If I'm below 1,000 feet above it, it'll become yellow, and if I'm below 100 feet above it, it'll become red if you put that on. As I turn back towards the airport here, it actually will paint the runway right on. If we fly down the runway, let me see if I've gone far enough to do this yet. I'm flying one-handed here. So if I nose down here and we just take a diving run at this runway, there's the runway right there. So you can see the synthetic vision even knows where the airports are, whether or not you're over the runway. So if you're coming in IFR, you can really get some orientation going well before you break out of the clouds. You know, there's the runway right there just off the left, and you see it on the screen, and that's synthetically generated just out of the unit understanding the GPS position in space and referencing that to a database. So let's climb back up here now, and what I'm going to do, I'll show you one other thing that the synthetic vision does that's kind of interesting. Let me get her leveled off, and we'll get rid of those flaps. That's causing us a headache there. So the other thing synthetic vision will do is it kind of gives you a highway in the sky. So if I set my pre-select altitude to, let's say 3,500 feet. So this is the altitude pre-select. I'm going to tell it I want to go to 3,500 feet, and I'm going to put it in altitude mode. Now it's not in autopilot mode, but it just knows that 3,500 is the altitude I want to go to. And then I'm going to tell it that I want to go direct, and we'll put Lake Havasu in here, which is my home base. So that's K, and jump over H, and we jump over I, enter, and enter. So now I've got a GPS bearing to Lake Havasu. I've told it I want to go to 3,500 feet. I'm going to roll out on that approximate bearing. Okay, we'll trim out here. We're climbing up there kind of crazy fast because I'm just messing around. But if I tell it, if I go back here to the PFD soft button, and then I bring up synthetic vision, I can get it to do, if I put on the horizon, number one, it puts the headings out on the horizon. And if I go to nav mode and autopilot, and we'll go flight level change, whoops, nose up, nose up, nose up. We'll start climbing here. We should see some boxes come in that are like a highway in the sky, and that's called the pathway. So that's right here. And if I hit pathway, do you see the boxes up here? We're going to climb up to those boxes, those magenta boxes. That's where we should be for the route that I told it we want to fly. And it's just like a highway in the sky. So let's take it up there, and we'll flight level change up a little higher here. Let's go to 74. So as we're climbing up, you can see the MFD is doing its thing. And those boxes are coming down now as we climb up to them, and we should be fairly centered on them once it gets us on track. And we'll end up flying through those boxes, and they will go all the way to the destination or whatever the route is that you set up in the flight plan. So you can actually see how it's doing that. So while it's doing that, I'll tell you the other thing that I like is at the top of the MFD, while we're climbing up to those boxes, you have some indications here: bearing, track, cross track, and estimated time en route. In the real G1000, those are all able to be changed. I happen to fly for Civil Air Patrol. We do search and rescue, and when we do search and rescue, one of the methods that we use requires us to change those values to what we want them to read. And so that's where being able to come down here and go to the auxiliary pages. So I go to auxiliary page, I go to auxiliary page number 4, and then here you see all these fields. I can just hit the cursor, so I have a blinking cursor now, and I'm going to take that cursor and I'm going to move it to field 1. When I move it to field 1, I can now use the small knob, and I can put whatever value I want in there, all these different values. So if I want field 1 to be bearing, I'll leave it there, field 2 to be track, field 3 to be cross track, and let's say I want this field 4, instead of be estimated time en route, I want it to be distance. So what I'll do is I'll just roll that to distance, enter, and that just changed these values up here. The other thing I can do is I can change the CDI, so the course deviation indicator, the width of the resolution of it, or the width of it when it's full deflection right now is in auto, and it's set to 2 miles. But what we do is we'll take that and we'll change that. Let me get back up there. We'll change that to 1/3 of a mile, and we'll take it out of auto, and that makes it that much more accurate. And it's now locked in. That's not a default setting. That's a custom setting that I'm putting in there. You can also come over here and change your UTC time if you need to change your clock time. You can put airspace alerts either on or off. All of these things are functional in this representation of the G1000 that are not in Xplane, and they work. So now when I go back to my map page, I have those values I want up here, and also I've locked in the width of the needle. Now you notice we're climbing up. I told it I wanted to go to 3,500 feet. I went to a flight level change on the GPS for 76 knots, which is about best rate. And sure enough, it's taking me right up, and now we're going right through the center, trying to get it to where the glare isn't on there, but you should see that it's flying us right through the center of those boxes. So that's the pathway that synthetic vision gives you, and it's a real easy just visual reference. Am I on track or where I want to go? Some people love it, some people hate it. So there it is, capturing the altitude. It just did the altitude capture. Now it's going to level off, and I've just been real happy with it. It just seems that so far, there's a few little things, like I said. There is a glitch in the VNAV. There's a thing called VNAV profile. If you're really into G1000, it will do the VNAV profile. In other words, it'll automatically start descents at the appropriate time for each waypoint as you do step downs. However, it won't rearm itself after the first one to do the next one. You have to manually rearm. That's something I've had some discussions with Chen about, and it sounds like he'll probably work on that on one of the next updates. It's no big deal. You just have to manually rearm it and know that it's not doing that. Another one is I use this with Pilot Edge. Looks like I better climb up or we're going to have an issue up here. So let's do that. So we'll take that altitude pre-select up to 5,500. So we'll just go to 5,500 and we'll do flight level change, and we'll put the speed back down to, we'll just do an 85 knot climb there. And you notice the boxes, the pathway immediately moved above us, and now we're climbing back up to it. So that's the synthetic vision, and you can see that mountain right here as this mountain. So it's pretty incredible. The other thing that we've identified is I use Pilot Edge because it makes much more realistic training, very much more realistic training. I love Pilot Edge. The volume knob, they didn't bother to hook the volume knobs here to the actual volume control on the simulator in Xplane 11. So I have to use the mouse to set the volume, which is not a big deal, except for because Pilot Edge is so realistic, a lot of times you have both comms going. You might have one comm listening to AWAS and one comm listening to nav, and you want to take that one or the other and bump the volume up or down. So, you would normally just select whichever one you want, or actually you would go here, you would select whichever one you want, and then adjust your volume. And it does show the volume as adjusting. If you look, when I turn that, it shows that I'm adjusting the percent of volume, but it's not actually doing it. So to adjust the volume, I have to go back to this screen. I'll bounce from here, I'll put that screen back up, and I have to go here and actually turn the volume knob for the radio volume. But I think he's going to be able to hook that up. And now would be a good time to look at frame rate. So with the G1000 being rendered on the screen, we're down to 40, looks like in the low 40s is where it's bouncing around right there. If I kill the G1000 on the screen, it just went to 60 frames per second. So it makes a 20 frame per second difference if you can just fly with the Simionics doing the rendering on its own, which works great. And I just put the outside view out there. Now if I need to look around or whatever, I've got the hat switch set up, and I'll just look down and see what I need to see, or look outside or whatever. And then when I'm done with that, I'll snap back to the front with no G1000. So let's see what else. That's pretty much it. I mean, this isn't like a tutorial on how to use it. It's more like a review of answering the question of why did I elect to go this way. I plan to do the full switch panels and the backup instruments. Those are, we're waiting for all that stuff to come, but in the meantime we've got it up and running and getting used to the Simionics system, working out, finding any nuances that are different so that we can make sure to advise guys. And you'll see here's the other thing the synthetic vision is doing. You'll see now it's coloring the terrain. So it sees that we're less than 100 feet, and it's putting a red right there on that terrain. So we're actually below that stuff over there, and it's starting to color, and we're below 1,000 feet. So you'll see it starts to color the terrain as you come up to it if you're within certain heights of it. So kind of an interesting deal. One thing that it does do that I'm not a big fan of, but I understand why. Again, I believe this has to do with memory. Are we going to sneak this out here? Let's see. We're climbing slowly. Let me increase the climb rate here a little bit. So I think we're just going to slide by here. On the with the search and rescue stuff that I do, we do a lot of work with the MFD, and we have a person flying the right seat. They're called the observer. They're setting up search patterns, and they're doing switching screens and stuff a lot on the MFD, and we do zoom in and zoom out quite a bit. And the one thing that it does do that the real G1000 does not do is you get a black screen for just a second while it re-renders if you change the range. So if I grab the range knob and I turn it, I get a momentary black screen while it redraws. So I can zoom way in or zoom way out, and it'll be black for a second while it re-renders that. So that's, I'm not a huge fan of that, but really overall that's like a super minor thing. It doesn't really cause me any problems. It's just something different than what you would see in the real deal. Looks like we're just gonna make it over the top of these mountains here. And it just gave the 1,000-foot to go call out, and probably I need to do some lean in here. Yep, losing some RPM and give her some throttle, and things would work a little better. So anyways, that's kind of my, I don't know if you call it a review, but kind of some of the reasons I decided to go this route. I'm real excited about it. It seems to be working really well. I've done a lot of hours of just sitting here playing with it, comparing it to what I know about the real unit, and figuring out how to use it to train, these other pilots that we want to transition over to glass from round dial. And you'll see now we're within 1,000 feet of our altitude, and here come the boxes are dropping down. So it's going to fly this right up into those magenta boxes, and we're right back on track. So for the fellow that was asking what exactly is the synthetic vision, it's a combination of a number of things. Number one, the terrain is on there. You can see there's a lake over here. There's the lake represented over there. There's another lake up ahead. It's not just a flat deal. It actually shows the topographical terrain out there. You can put the pathway on there if you want, or you can take it off. You just go to PFD, and if you don't want the pathway, you hit synthetic vision. You can take that off and leave the rest of the synthetic vision. If you don't want, now right now on the horizon bar, it actually is showing the heading 060090. If you don't want that, you can take that off with the horizon heading soft key right there. It also shows airport signs, so it's dropping a little pin with the sign on any airport within view. So here's an airport right here that's within view. If you don't like that, you can take that off. And if you don't like the synthetic terrain at all, you can just take that off, and it's going to re-render it as just a standard G1000 without any synthetic vision, just brown and blue. So that's it. That was a long-winded thing. If you like this video or you want to see more stuff like that as we continue to build this simulator up, let me know. Like I said, I plan to go with a full set of switch panels to mimic the G1000. We're running a Yoko yoke. These are Vernio throttles. For right now, I'm using a desktop aviator flap switch. May or may not stay with that. I've got rudder pedals down there. Love this Flight Sounds dual FSX. It allows me to have two headsets going, which is excellent for training. And actually, I will put a splitter in this one so the instructor can have an additional headset. I'll blow the motor up here, so the instructor can have an additional headset going. And my PC was built by the guys at X-Force, and it's been running great. So you can see the frame rates on that thing. Even this is Orbix Southern True, what do they call it? True Nav Southern California, I think, or something like that. It's some pretty sweet graphical representation. I mean, it's like photorealistic in a lot of places, and it's still popping. I don't know, almost 60 frames per second. I think it's a 44-inch Samsung monitor, and that's the scoop. So hope you enjoyed that, and if you did, thumbs up, subscribe. I'll be putting some more stuff up as we build this thing up. And any suggestions or comments anybody have, just leave them down below. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.